Hi everyone, thank you for purchasing this sheet. Today, I will show you how to use Annual Ultimate Monthly Budget Spreadsheet. Before we start, please remember this rules. Do not change any colors on any of the sheet. Do not enter information in cells which are not highlighted to enter. Do not change names of the tabs. Do not delete any rows or cells on any of the tabs, as some of the raw and cells contain hidden formulas. By deleting them, the spreadsheet will stop working or will not make a proper calculations. So let's begin. First, go to the Setup tab. Before you start adding anything to the spreadsheet, please click the checkbox. This will indicate where you can add your information. Make sure not to enter anything in areas that are not marked with a darker yellow color, as those sections contain hidden formulas. If you change a formula by mistake, the spreadsheet may stop working properly. Next, you'll see a section for currency. Here, you can change it to any currency you prefer. Below that, you'll find the starting balance. Enter your starting amount here, and when you move to the Budget tab, be sure to check the Rollover checkbox if you want the starting balance to be added to your monthly budgeting. If you not, simply leave the checkbox unchecked. Below, you'll find the Starting Month section. Here, you need to select the month when your annual budgeting starts. This action will adjust the order of the months in the Annual Dashboard and Annual Total tabs accordingly. Under each main category, you should enter the relevant subcategories. Please do not change the names of the main categories. In the Setup, you can enter up to 20 subcategories for income, debt and savings, and up to 25 subcategories for bills, subscriptions and expenses. These subcategories will automatically be transferred to the Budgeting tabs. If you delete any of them in the Setup, they will also be removed from all the Budgeting tabs. If you have two subcategories with the same name, even if they are in different categories, the sheet will highlight them in red, prompting you to change one of them. If you do not make this change, it will affect the sheet's calculations. For example, if you already have a subcategory named Car, and you recently added another subcategory called Car, the sheet will highlight this duplicate. You should rename the most recently added subcategory to something like Car 1 or Red Car. It's important to rename the last added subcategory, not the first one, as you may have already used the first one in the monthly and transaction tabs. If you delete or rename the first one, you will see red marks on the transaction tracker and monthly budget, and all calculations will be affected. This could lead to incorrect results due to the same name being used for subcategories. Now, let's move on to the Monthly Budget tab. If you selected March as the first month in the Setup, you'll be directed to the March Budget tab. Since I've chosen January, I'll be going to the January Budgeting tab. At the top, you'll see the name of the month and the year. Below that, you'll see the spending period. This cannot be changed as the spreadsheet operates on a month-by-month basis. You can enter a due date for certain categories, such as income, debt, bills, and subscriptions. This is optional and will not affect any other sheets. It's just a reminder for you. Please note that there is a small line before the amount for the currency symbol. Do not enter any information or make changes in that area, as it's reserved for displaying the currency. The currency symbol will appear automatically once you enter your budget amount. This process works the same way across all the sheets. Next, enter your budgeted amount in the designated field. About actual and difference columns, please don't enter anything in the actual and difference columns on this sheet. Instead, you'll need to record your actual income and expenses in the Transaction Tracker tab. The budget sheets automatically pull that information over to the actual column. The difference will also be calculated for you automatically based on the numbers you enter in the transaction sheet. So remember, all your actual spending and income should be entered in the Transaction Tracker sheet, and everything else will update for you. In a few moments, it'll show you how to use Transaction Tracker tab. Calculations between the budgeted amount and actual spending work as follows. The sheet simply subtract the actual amount from the budgeted amount to determine the difference. In the income category, if you budgeted $1,000, and your actual income is $1,200, as entered in the transaction tracker, the difference will show as plus $200, indicating that you earned more than planned. Conversely, if your actual income is $800, the difference will show as negative $200. This principle applies specifically to the income category. For all other categories, the calculation works in reverse. For example, if you budgeted $100 and spent $120, the difference will show as negative $20. Conversely, if you budgeted $120 and spent $100, it will show as plus $20. Next to some categories, you'll find checkboxes. You can check these off after you've paid certain expenses. This acts as a helpful reminder, but it won't affect any calculations in this or any other spreadsheet. Now, I'll walk you through the left side of the sheet. On the left, you'll see a rollover checkbox. If you check this, the starting balance from the first budgeting month, $100 in our case, which we entered on setup sheet on the beginning, will be added to the current month's total. This means that any leftover money from this month will carry over to the next month's balance, as long as the rollover checkbox is checked. You'll also notice a section that shows totals, including budgeted amounts. The budgeting amount includes the budgeted amounts for all categories, excluding the income budgeting amount. Total spent. Here, you can see all the money you've spent. Next month's start. This represents the money left to spend this month that you haven't used. If the rollover checkbox is clicked on the next budgeting month sheet, this amount will be transferred to the next month. Left to budget. This amount represents your budgeted income minus all other categories. This way, you can see how much you still have available to budget. And finally, left to spend, this is your actual income minus all your actual spending. Underneath, you'll find a cash flow overview. At the top, you can see how much you've actually spent or earned. Just below that, it shows how much you can still spend in green, or how much you've overspent in red. The income section works the same way as I explained earlier about actual amounts and differences. In green, you can see how much extra money you've earned, and in red, you'll see how much more you need to earn, or how much you didn't reach your budgeted goal. You'll also see your top 10 expenses for the current month. Below that, you can find an overview of your daily spending amounts. At the very top of the sheet, there's a balance overview. The budget versus actual section displays how much you budgeted and how much you've spent. And next to it is a breakdown of your categories by percentage of actual spending. Let's move to Transaction Tracker. At the top, you'll see the Analytics board, where you can easily pick a starting date for analyzing the sheet. The spreadsheet will automatically calculate the month for you. It will display your total spending for the selected period, along with a summary of your total income and all your expenses, including debt, savings, bills, subscriptions, and expenses. You'll also find a breakdown for the chosen period, giving you a clearer picture of where your money goes. Next to that, there's a daily spending breakdown, which helps you see exactly when your money is being spent. If you scroll down, you can access the top 20 expenses analysis, followed by a ranking of your expenses from highest to lowest for the selected time frame. As you scroll down, you can add your spendings or income. Select the date from the calendar by double-clicking on the cell. Next, enter the amount. Please avoid entering anything in the narrow line, as it's reserved for the currency symbol. To enter a decimal amount like $60.76, type the whole number first, 60, then use a dot, not a comma, and finally type the decimal part, 76. You'll also need to choose a category and subcategory for your entries. Additionally, there's an option to add comments if you'd like to provide more details about your transactions. Sometimes, when you select the date, enter the amount, and choose a category, you might see false instead of the subcategories. Don't worry, this just means your sheet is processing. If you see a blue line loading in the right corner, it indicates that the sheet is analyzing information or adding up values. You can click somewhere else and then open the drop-down menu again to see the subcategories. Let's discuss how to delete incorrect information or transactions that were entered by mistake. You cannot select the entire row and delete it. Instead, follow these steps. First, click on the cell with the date and delete it. Second, select the amount. Click on just the number, not the currency sign, and delete it. Next, select Category, Subcategory, and Notes one by one, and delete the information as well. I will add some more transactions for the next few months to explain how the sheet works. I've added transactions from January to May and set budgets for each month. Now, I'll show you how the Annual Totals sheet works. Let's move on to the Annual Totals tab. In this tab, you'll see detailed information for each subcategory, how much money you earned and spent each month. At the very top, you'll find the total amount for each category, broken down by month. For example, in January, the total actual income was $3,700. In the debt category, $300 was spent. In savings, $577.76 was allocated. For bills, $234.60 was spent. In subscriptions, $124 was spent. And in expenses, $260.30 was spent. At the bottom, you'll see the amount left to spend for that month. This is the difference between your actual income and all your expenses. At the very right, you'll find the total budgeted amount. This is the total budgeted amount for all months, in our case, from January to May, as I've budgeted for 5 months. Next to it, you'll see the total actual amount, which represents the total earned or spent for each category over all the months. Next to that, you'll find the total difference, which is the difference between the total budgeted amount and the total actual amount. After that, there's the average, which is calculated by adding the actual amounts and dividing them by the number of months filled in the transaction tracker. This process works the same way for all categories. If you scroll down, you will find same information for each subcategory. Let's take a look at the Annual Dashboard tab. At the top, you'll see a reminder of the year you're budgeting for. Please note that you can't change the starting date here. It must be done in the Setup tab. Below that, you'll find charts. Income versus Expenses chart, which shows your overall income and expenses for the year. The Budget versus Actual chart, comparing your planned budget to your actual spending. The Spending Overview, giving you a quick look at how much you've spent on each category. The top 10 expenses, showing your biggest expenses. Further down, you'll see a breakdown for each category: income, debt, savings, bills, subscriptions, and expenses. You'll be able to view a month-by-month comparison of your planned versus actual spending, along with a difference table for each category. Next, there's a table showing where most of your money is going, both in terms of amount and percentage breakdown. If you scroll down even further, you'll find a chart overview of each category. Let's move on to the 50-30-20 tab. This tab is optional. If you purchased the weekly and monthly annual spreadsheet, you'll see a drop-down menu at the top of the sheet where you can choose whether to calculate your budget on a weekly or monthly basis. You can change this setting at any time. After selecting the period, choose your starting date and the end date will be calculated automatically. If you only purchased the monthly budget spreadsheet, you won't have this option. Next, scroll down to the percentage breakdown section, where you'll enter your percentages for needs and wants. It's important how you enter the percentage. First way is click only once with your mouse, do not delete anything, just enter the amount. Second way is you double-click and move your cursor in front, or the percentage sign, after delete the number and enter your percentage. Important, do not delete percentage sign. If you do, the formula will disappear. If you did, as you remember, just undo and formula will come back. The totals for savings plus debt will be calculated automatically based on your inputs. Do not enter there anything. Important, if your combined needs and wants exceed 100%, the savings and debt section will prompt you to adjust your percentages. Make sure the total for needs and wants is equal to or less than 100%. Actual percentage and amount breakdown will be calculated and filled up automatically, so enter information only into goal percentage breakdown, and amount breakdowns will update automatically as you enter your data. Remember, you should never enter data directly into the savings and debt fields. Always input your information in the Needs and Wants section. Allocate your needs and wants. After you've set your percentages, scroll down to allocate your needs and wants according to your budget. Just choose to each category from drop-down menu Want or Need. If you choose wants to some subcategory, let's say Want, and you want to track down its have to stay as Want. If you will change it from wants to needs, then in all the months, which you will track back, it will shows always in needs. Income, debt and savings don't have to be allocated. It's automatically transferred. Review previous month's expenses. If you want to see your expenses from the previous month, simply change the starting date to the desired month. The sheet will adjust to show you that breakdown. Expense breakdown. Next to the allocation section, you'll find a breakdown of your highest to lowest expenses for the selected date range. This will help you identify where your money is going. If you move to the top, you will find goal versus actual breakdown. Next to it, you will find overview, how much you earned in selected period, how much you spent on your needs, wants, debt plus saving. Next to it, you will see debt and saving breakdown. Let's move to calendar sheet. Important instructions for using the sheet. Calendar sheet is really sensitive sheet, which includes a lot of hidden formulas. Please pay close attention to the following rules. Do not change colors. Keep the original colors as they are. No adding or deleting rows or columns. This is crucial to maintain the integrity of the sheet. Do not delete checkboxes. They are important for tracking payments. No adding information. Stick to the designated inputs only. First, take a moment to watch and listen carefully to what you can and cannot do with this sheet. It contains sensitive formulas that must be preserved, so it's essential to follow these guidelines. Let's get started. Step 1. Choose a month. Select the month you want to display. For example, if you choose January 6th, the calendar will show the period from January 6th to February 5th. Step 2. Select the day of the week. Decide which day you want the week to start on. Step 3. Add your payments. Next, scroll down to add the payments you want to show on the calendar. To help you understand how the calendar works, I will show you examples with different payment frequencies. Next, let's add payments. From the drop-down menu, select the appropriate subcategory for your payment. For example, if you receive your wages every Friday, choose Main Income. Let's say you want to record a payment starting on January 10th with a weekly frequency of $400. The calendar will show your wage of $400 every Friday. If you choose to set an end date, for example, January 24th, the wage will only appear on the calendar between January 10th and January 24th. After that, the payment will no longer be displayed in the following weeks. If you're receiving payments twice a week on different days, like Tuesdays and Thursdays, and as bi-weekly frequency, here's how you can set it up. For the Tuesday payment, select part-time job. Add starting date in my case is the 7th of January. Leave the end date as blank. Set it as bi-weekly frequency. Enter the amount you receive for the Tuesday payment. For the Thursday payment, select part-time job. Add starting date in my case is the 9th of January. Set it as bi-weekly frequency. Enter the amount you receive for the Thursday payment. Leave the end date as blank too. And you don't need to set an end date unless something changes with your job. This way, you can set up bi-weekly payments. And payments for different days for same category. You might have payments that don't quite fit into any of the standard categories. For these, you can easily add them under the Other Payments category. Here's how it works. First, head over to the Other Payments section. This is where you can add any payment that doesn't already have a specific category. Give your payment a name. For example, let's say you're adding a school payment. Type that in the name field. Now, select the date for the payment. If it's a one-time payment, you have to select starting date. For example, 15th January and the end date 15th of January. Then, pick any of the frequency, Doesn't matter which one. I will choose yearly. Finally, enter the amount. Let's say $100. Don't forget, it's really important that the name you choose for your payment isn't already being used in any other category. You can't have two categories with the same name, so make sure it's unique. This is how you can add any of the payments which is not in any other categories. Alright, let's move on to the debt category. First, I'm going to add a payment for the car subcategory. I'll set the payment for the 20th of January with a monthly frequency and a payment amount of $200. This means that this payment will show up on the 20th of every month until I decide to set an end date. Now, let's add another payment, this time for credit card 1. I'm going to set it for 1st January and have it run through 20th February. The payment will be $5 daily. This will show up every day during that time frame, from January 1st to February 20th, just like we've set it. I'll keep adding more payments and continue explaining how everything else works. Important note on deleting. If you need to remove an entry, do not select and delete an entire row. This can accidentally remove currency symbols and formulas. Instead, delete entries one by one. First delete name of subcategory, next dates, frequency skip the currency sign, and finally delete the amount. Just keep in mind that if you delete a subcategory from the setup, it will never appear on the calendar again. You're essentially erasing it completely. Now let's move on the top. About checkboxes. Checkboxes will appear next to any subcategory listed on the calendar. When you check a checkbox, the information on the left will be automatically calculated. On the left, you'll see Overview, how much you'll earn this month. But pay attention, checkboxes do not affect the income category or the total to pay category. When you check the checkboxes, it will show you how much you've paid and how much is still left to pay. Under the Overview, you'll see a Bills Overview. At the top, you'll see the total amount to each category that needs to be paid this month. Below that, you'll see how much has already been paid, which is calculated by the checkboxes. On the far right, you'll also see the weekly totals for what's have to be paid. Checkboxes don't have influence on this amount, it just shows how much you have to pay this week, excluding income. Under the Bills Overview, there's a Notes section where you can add and delete information as a reminder. Just note that these notes won't show up on the calendar, it's for your reference only. You can add and delete them anytime. If you change the month, the checkboxes will remain checked in the same spots, so before you switch months, make sure to uncheck them. Also, please be patient when changing the month or the day of the week from which the week starts. In the top right corner, you'll see a blue loading bar while the system recalculates all the formulas. Make sure to wait until it's fully loaded before making any changes. Do not close or reload the page during this time. Just give it a moment to finish loading. It depends how strong laptop or PC you have. To uncheck the boxes, select the top checkbox, make it empty, the cell have to be highlighted. In the right corner of the cell, you will see a dot. You have clicked on the dot and drag it down. This way, you will uncheck it. Please make sure that you're dragging it down only on checkbox raw, not moving to any near cells. You'll need to repeat this for each week 7 times total. If you don't uncheck them before changing the month, you'll get miscalculations for the new month until you manually uncheck the boxes. Please note that once you uncheck them, you won't be able to see what you've already paid from the previous month and what's still unpaid. Before you start entering any information into the Debt Snowball Effect spreadsheet, make sure you go to the Setup sheet first and check the checkbox. This will highlight the areas where you can enter data and make it clear which sections are editable and which are not. It's a simple step, but it helps keep things organized and ensures you're filling out the correct fields. This tab is independent. The only thing that's not is the highlighted checkbox, which you've already checked. On this sheet, you can choose any start date, and it won't have any influence on any other sheets. Similarly, you can write any debt names you prefer, the same or different from what's on the setup sheet. It doesn't matter. So, What exactly is the debt snowball effect? It's a debt repayment strategy where you focus on paying off your smallest debt first, while making minimum payments on your larger debts. Once the smallest debt is paid off, you move on to the next smallest and continue this process. The amount you were paying on the paid-off debt is then added to the next one, creating a snowball effect that helps you pay off your debts more quickly. Now, before we start entering data, we need to select your starting month. This is the month you begin paying off your debts. Once you've selected the month, we'll scroll down a bit to fill in the information so the sheet can calculate your payments. Start by writing your debt name. For example, let's say we choose mortgage. Next, you'll enter the starting amount of the mortgage. In my case, it's $100,000. Then, input your annual interest rate. Mine is 5.25%. After that, enter your minimum monthly payment. For my mortgage, it's $600. You'll also see a field for credit limit. This is optional, but you can fill it in if you want to track your credit utilization. Once you've entered this information, the spreadsheet will automatically calculate sections like interest owed, debt-free month, and debt-free date. These fields are calculated based on the data you enter, so you won't need to worry about them. Now, you'll need to repeat this process for each of your debts. If we scroll up, we'll see that our debts are listed from smallest to largest. As you can see, the TV debt is 58.23% paid off. This is because we entered the starting month for debt repayment as August, and the current month is December. Based on this, the sheet calculates how much of the debt has been paid off. So it's really important to enter the correct starting date for your debt payments. For example, if I change my starting date, the entire sheet will recalculate. Let's say I change it to November. Now, you can see that everything gets recalculated based on that new start date. Now, let's move to the top. At the very top of the sheet, you'll see your debt-free date. This date will adjust depending on how much extra you're paying each month. The more you pay, the sooner you'll be debt-free. Below that, you'll find your payoff progress, which shows both your current balance and your starting balance, giving you a clear view of how much progress you've made. Under that, there's a line with information about your total monthly payment, total credit limit, and total credit utilization, but only if you've entered credit limits for your debts. You'll also see fields for your starting month, current month, and extra monthly payment. Adding an extra payment will help you pay off your debt faster. For example, if I add an extra $200 to my payment, I'll reach my debt-free date sooner. Once you enter this extra payment, the sheet will calculate your new debt-free date based on that extra payment. Please wait until. The sheet recalculate. It may take some time. On the right corner, you will see blue line loading. Its mean that sheet's still calculating. However, if you later decide to delete the extra payment, the sheet will recalculate everything from the beginning as if you hadn't been making those extra payments. The best approach is to enter the payment that you most likely will pay each month. If there are months when you can't make that extra payment, you can always decrease the amount for those months. Alternatively, if you find you can pay more in some months, you can increase your payment. I'll show you how to adjust your payments in just a moment. Under that, you'll find a line that shows how many debts have been paid off, how many are left to pay, and what the total balance paid. On the left side, you'll notice a small plus sign. If you click on this, the sheet will expand to show the monthly payment plan. If you want to collapse the details again, just click the minus sign. Don't worry, sometimes it takes a few moments to open. Just let the sheet to think. Now, if you want to adjust the extra payment, you can do so at any time. Let's say you want to pay an extra $100 in November. Simply enter 100, and the sheet will recalculate with this extra $100 for November only. If you want to reduce the payment instead, just enter a negative number. For example, if you decide to reduce your payment by $100 in December, just enter -100. No need to press escape. just type the number directly. The sheet will automatically update your payment amounts based on that change. It's important to note that these extra or reduced payments will only apply to the specific month you've entered them for. For example, if you added $100 to November, it will add the payment only for November. Reduce your payment for December, it will reduce the payment amount for that month. However, it will also have an impact on the following months. The sheet will adjust future months based on the new reduced payment amount, so keep in mind that your debt-free date may change accordingly. Let's take a look at your first debt, which is TV. You'll see the debt name, the percentage you've paid off so far, and when you'll be able to pay off this debt. You'll also find the starting amount, minimum monthly payment, interest rate, current balance. This is what is left to pay. Next is balance paid, interest owed, and credit limit and utilization. Credit utilization shows if you've filled out the credit limit information at the bottom of the sheet. Under, you will find payment and balance. But if you want to see more information at the top, you will see plus sign. If you click, that you will see more detailed payment plan. You will see information like interest payment, principal, the minimum payment, and additional payment. To close it up, just click minus sign. Finally, at the very top of the sheet, you'll find two graphs, the debt distribution graph and the debt payoff graph. These graphs will give you a visual representation of your debt breakdown and your progress as you pay off each debt. So, that's the overall process for using the Debt Snowball Effect spreadsheet. By following these steps, you'll be able to track your debts, make adjustments, and pay them off faster. And remember, every time you make a payment, the sheet updates automatically, helping you stay on track towards becoming debt-free. Before you start editing the Net Worth tab, it's important to understand that the information here is entered manually. This spreadsheet is not integrated with the transaction tracker. It only works with the setup sheet, which contains checkboxes to indicate where you can add or modify data, including the currency symbol. Quick reminder, please be careful around the currency line. Do not enter any data there. Now, let's get started. First, duplicate the spreadsheet. This way, you won't have to manually delete information at the end of the year. When the year starts, you can simply open the copy and start fresh. You can hide the copied sheet for safekeeping. In the top left corner, select the starting date. The sheet will automatically update to reflect the sequence of months starting from your chosen date. Keep in mind, if you change the starting month after you've already entered data, the numbers will not move with the month. They'll stay in the cell where you originally entered them. Next, under Starting Date section, enter your net worth goal for the selected year. Please do not enter information in Net Worth Tracker. The formulas will automatically calculate and add all the information for you. Next, let's move down to the Assets section. In this section, you can customize the main subcategory names and add subcategories under each category. For example, you might want to keep the cash and bank accounts and investments categories, but instead of the properties category, you could change it to business properties. Similarly, you might want to rename the other assets category to personal properties. Once you've updated the main categories, don't forget to add the relevant subcategories for each one. After you've added all the subcategories to your main categories, enter the starting amount for each asset subcategory. If you don't have starting amount, you simply can leave cell empty or just enter 0. Now, start adding information to each subcategory. For example, cash, I have $2,300. Card 1, I enter $1,800. For card 2, $1,200. Keep adding all your assets. Once you've entered the starting balance and the data for the first month, September in our case, you'll be able to see the totals at the top of the sheet. The total for your starting amount will be displayed, as well as the total for the first month. If you look to the far right, you'll see the total growth for all categories. Similarly, if you scroll down, you can see the growth for each category and subcategory. For each main category, such as in our case, cash and bank accounts, investments, business properties, personal properties, you can see the calculations separately. For example, let's take a look at the cash and bank accounts total. For the start, the total is $2,800, and for September, the total is $5,300. So our growth is $2,500, which represents an increase of 89.29%. You can also see the growth for each individual subcategory. For example, Card 1, the starting amount is $700, and for September, it's $1,800. If you look to the right, you'll see that the growth was $1,100, which is a 157.14% increase. This helps you track exactly where the changes are happening. Next, let's look at the investments category. You'll notice that the starting amount for investments was higher than the value for September. In this case, we've experienced a negative growth of negative $1,350, which represents a decrease of negative 12.05%. This gives you a clear picture of how your investments are performing under the current conditions. At the top of the sheet, you'll also see the total assets automatically calculated. For example, if the total starting amount was $371,000 and the first month shows $373,650, the growth for that period would be $2,650, which represents a 0.71% increase. This total is updated automatically every time you enter new data. So, to recap, the sheet will show you the growth both by category and subcategory, and you can clearly see both positive and negative changes over time. It gives you a detailed overview of how your assets are growing or declining, making it easier for you to track your financial progress. Don't forget to review the summary at the top regularly to see how all your categories and subcategories are performing. If you ever need to make adjustments, you can simply update the numbers and the formulas will recalculate the totals and growth percentages for you. Now, let's move down to the liabilities section. Just like with the assets section, you can customize the names of the main categories here as well. After that, you can add your subcategories, set the starting balance, and begin entering your data. Remember, do not change any colors on any of the sheets. Only enter information in the cells that are highlighted with the darker yellow color. For starters, we had $371,000 in assets and $270,000 in liabilities, which gives us a net worth of $101,000 at the beginning. In September, our assets were $373,650 and our liabilities were $263,600. So our net worth increased to $110,050. If you look to the far right, you can see the growth from the start to September, which is $9,050, or an 8.96% increase. At the very top left corner, under Net Worth Overview, you can see your net worth goal. Also, you can see how much is left to reach your goal. The current net worth will show the last calculated net worth. Even if it's October, it will still display September's net worth since that's the most recent calculation. You'll also see the total of your assets, liabilities, and total growth here. At the top, you can also see Net Worth Evolution, which tracks the changes over time, assets versus liabilities. On the far right, there's a drop-down menu where you can choose to view either the asset breakdown or the liabilities breakdown. Will be displayed. Let's move to Sinking Funds sheet. The Sinking Funds sheet is designed to help you keep track of your savings. Before you start entering any information, make sure to go to the Setup sheet and click the checkbox so that you can see the rows where you can add your data. The Sinking Funds sheet integrates with both the Setup tab and the Transaction Tracker tab. It pulls in subcategories from the Debt and Saving categories from the Setup tab. When you begin, select Savings from the drop-down menu. This menu will show subcategories from both the Debt and Saving categories. Choose the one that corresponds to your savings goal. After selecting your savings subcategory, enter your savings goal. Specify the monthly amount you'd like to save, and input both your starting date and the starting amount. Ensure this data is entered for all relevant subcategories. For instance, if you set up the car category with a starting date of February 15th and a starting amount of $300, This amount will be recorded as your initial savings for that goal. Now, if you change the starting date to January 1st, all the related transactions for the car subcategory will automatically transfer to the sinking funds sheet, reflecting the new start date and adjusting the data accordingly. I will add some more data and continue explaining how does it work. After changing the starting date to January 1st, the amount saved increased from $300 to $405, reflecting the additional contributions or adjustments made during that period. Let's move to Transaction Tracker. For example, let's say you want to enter a transaction of $25 for the car subcategory on January 15th. When you move to the sinking funds sheet, you'll see that $25 has been added to your savings for that subcategory. Additionally, the same amount will be added to the January Budget tab. However, if a subcategory hasn't been entered in the Sinking Fund tab, the transaction won't be transferred to the sheets. If the starting date for the car subcategory is January 1st and you enter a $100 transaction for December 31st or any date earlier, when you go to the Sinking Funds sheet, you will only see the $430 from the January 1st entry and not $530. This is because the starting date for the car subcategory is set to January 1st, so only transactions entered from that date onward will be transferred and reflected in the sinking fund. Any transactions entered before the starting date will not be included. As you add transactions to the transaction tracker, the data on the sinking funds sheet will automatically update and recalculate based on the new information. The end date is only an estimate calculated from the data you entered, such as how much you plan to pay monthly. If you end up paying more than you planned, the information will update accordingly to reflect the extra payments. At the very top left, you'll find the Sinking Fund overview, where you can see details like your total goal, total saved, how much is left to save, your total starting amount, your progress as a percentage, and how many months are left until you reach your goal. Next to the Sinking Fund overview, you'll see the Sinking Fund distribution, followed by the Sinking Fund progress. On the far right, you'll find how many months are left to reach your goal.